Once you
saying
get
from
everything in
now to
place,
2 years from now,
yeah.
energy is going to be tight, and these AI companies are not going to be able to deliver the services that's required to generate these kinds of earnings. Now, I'm happy to have somebody shoot that. I'm okay with that. I'm putting up a straw man here, and I just want to know if AI is holding up this whole market, which three of us seem to believe, well, then we're in trouble
because we don't have enough energy.
because we got a window where energy is going to be tight. And I could see some kid trying to figure out whether Yogi Berra's batting average is going to be better than Aaron Judge's and making some guy in Minnesota freeze his ass off
Yeah.
because he can't get heat or energy. I'm
Hey, everybody, welcome back to Markets and Madness, the place where we discuss the madness that occurs when economics, politics, and personalities all move in different directions. We have a guest with us today, somebody, an old and near and dear friend who's been on several times. Steve Flanagan joins us, and my brother Tim here. So, how are you guys? How's everybody doing?
Doing great. Good to see you, Fred and Tim, and happy Thanksgiving.
Yeah, yeah. Happy Thanksgiving, good holidays to everybody.
all good
So,
here in warm Florida. Nice.
warm Florida. Good for you. Yeah, you both of you are in warm Florida. That's
That's
right.
right. I'm up in the Panhandle now, where you get 3 seasons, so not so bad. I know my son's saying it's in the low 40s, high 30s, and I said, well, we're 75 here today.
It's a perfect golf day.
Yep,
Right? That's
so
right.
true.
Well, just looking at the markets, I mean, we've seen a lot of volatility. Down 2.5%, up 2.5% the next day, down again, up again. I remember when I used to read Dennis Gartman, he used to say when you have volatility like this, it means a change in trend is coming. It's like the battle that's going on when somebody's trying to take the hill, you know, and in a shooting war where they gain some ground, they lose some ground. They gain some ground, they lose some ground. It's like the end of a trend is coming. Do you guys see that? Feel that? What are you thinking?
Fred, I couldn't agree more, but I don't think it's necessarily, let's call it a bid and an offer, buyers and sellers. I think it's more a generational thing that people, old timers like us, we look at the market and we see things that kind of don't make sense right now. Let's take Michael Burry, who closed Scion Asset Management. Another classical, look, there's a time to just step aside and do nothing, which is what he says he's doing now. And I think that the dynamics of the market, the liquidity in the world, has classical thinkers like us that look back at what we've learned over the years. It doesn't make sense for a company to be trading at 40 times or 50 times. So we short it, but it goes higher. And I think that the dynamics at work right now are completely different. So, yeah, I do believe that there's kind of like a tectonic plate that's shifting right now, but I think it's between the way we looked at things and the way we should be looking at things. I think they're changing.
Uh, I think it was John Maynard Keynes that said, don't tell me what the average man thinks. Tell me what the average man thinks the average man thinks. And it's really, for us, really, we look short term. We've been trained to look short term. Yeah, we got a long term view, but we know that in the long run, you don't get there if you're blown away in the short term because we're used to trading in highly leveraged markets and you can't afford the drawdowns. So, with that said as a backdrop, let's just take a look at what's happening here. I think we're trying to find out what shiny object the market is going to focus on for the next few weeks. Is that fair to say?
Very
So,
fair.
if that's the case, you could look long term and say macro, I mean, the worst thing I would have in a trading room was a guy coming to me and saying, "Oh, this budget," and I would say, "Yeah, but this could be like a 30-year issue. We can't live waiting for the market to recognize it. But if the market decides to focus on the budget, well, that's a big deal. So we're talking about market focus here, and I think market focus is starting to move to an unusual place. Our focus, whenever a market looks overbought or the PEs get to the levels that we've seen, we start to look at that and say, are these PEs justified? And then earnings come out and they blow the doors off the earnings. And all of a sudden, a 45 PE becomes a 35 PE because the earnings, if the E has gone up, right? So we shrug our shoulders and say, well, I guess it's justified. But I've started to look for the last few weeks as to what it will take for these AI stocks to really reach the justification of these levels. And that's, to me, that's the question. How realistic are these PEs in the face of what we're looking at? Now, what is it going to take for these levels of earnings to keep blowing the doors off the analysts? And it's going to take something that we don't have a lot of, electricity. And I've been trading a stock called CoreWeaves. And CoreWeaves didn't owe me any money at all. I was making a lot of money on the stock. And I grew to love it, and I took a position in it, and I reestablished the position after I got out and took profits. And I was very happy to reestablish, and it started to go down because they had good earnings, but one of the reasons their earnings didn't really blow the doors off was that a data center announced a delay.
Mm-hmm.
So this is a stock that was trading at one point at 185. Recent history, 100 to 120. It was down to like 165 one day last week. I don't know where it is now.
65. It was down to like 65. You're saying,
65.
right?
Did I say
Yeah,
165?
not 165. Yeah.
So it was down to like 65. So it was like they split the stock but didn't issue shares. So this thing had really collapsed. And I started to look into the fact that a data center didn't show up, which had such an impact on the value of the stock. And I belong to a group, and there's two guys in the energy industry in the group. One guy builds and sells turbines, and another guy has a natural gas company. And I talked to both of them. I got them both on the side today. And I said, Thursday. And I said, realistically, over the next 2 years, are these companies going to have access to the kind of energy they're going to need to justify these PEs? Because the assumption is they're going to continue to blow the doors off the market, and that assumes they're going to get the energy to do that. And he said, well, the energy is going to be tight in the next 2 years because I can't get any equipment. I don't have the labor to put any equipment. The guy with the gas company said to me, I have 5 really big customers, and they're ready to pay any price for me to commit to them. And I can't commit because I know I can't deliver to all 5. I don't have the labor, and I can't get the equipment. There's backlogs on the equipment, and people are buying old equipment instead of buying new stuff and upgrading because that's the only stuff that they can find. Then I went to the other guy, the guy from the turbines, and he said to me, equipment is a huge issue. He said, they got planes sitting in the desert, and I've seen this. I don't know if you've ever seen this. He said, they got planes, and they're taking the engines off these jet planes to make turbines out of them. And there's a problem with that because they're used to operating at very low temperature. They fly, so they cool down a lot easier. He said, that's an issue, but we're getting around that. But it's an issue. So that's telling me that they're scavenging jet engines in order to get turbines to deliver to these data centers and have enough electricity to power these data. To me, that's what AI is resting on.
How long does it take to start these data centers? Once they get everything in place, it still takes years to put them together.
I don't know, but I'm assuming a 2-year window.
Okay.
So I'm
So once you
saying
get
from
everything in
now to
place-
2 years from now, energy is going to be tight, and these AI companies are not going to be able to deliver the services that's required to generate these kinds of earnings. Now, I'm happy to have somebody shoot that NES. I'm okay with that. I'm putting up a straw man here, and I just want to know. But if AI is holding up this whole market, which three of us seem to believe, well, then we're in trouble
because we don't have enough energy.
because we got a window where energy is going to be tight.
Tight,
And
but
I could see some kid trying to figure out whether Yogi Berra's batting average is going to be better than Aaron Judge's and making some guy in Minnesota freeze his ass off
yeah.
because he can't get heat or energy. You know, I lived in California years ago and we had brownouts. And now they got electric vehicles running up and down California, draining energy. And we got AI saying, yeah, I'm going to need energy. And I see demand up there and supply. I got two guys in the supply side telling me we can't deliver supply.
But with demand always comes innovation. And I always like to say, I agree with you, Tim. I think you've nailed a significant point here. But I think that that demand is going to spark an innovative mind out here that's going to come up with a shorter term solution. I think that you'll see the US probably push very fast into the small module nuclear reactors.
Yeah, I
And
bought that stock. And I don't want to interrupt you, Steve, but let's assume you're right. Remember what the first thing I said. It doesn't really matter whether we're right or wrong. It matters whether the market chooses to focus on this issue. And that's my question.
mhm. And I
Well,
think that's the sell off that we've just seen. Everybody's questioning the debt and the
I,
things like you're
I
talking.
I think 2 weeks ago we started talking about valuations. The valuations were way too high, and you needed spectacular numbers, not great numbers, in order to maintain. And we saw Nvidia come out with, what people have told me is great numbers, and the stock got crushed the next day. It was up for the first 6 hours, then down for the next 24. Right. So I think the markets right now is focusing on valuations, and to extrapolate that point, if you can't deliver, if they can't deliver their product in the next 2 years, valuations are going to suffer,
Yes.
right?
And
Yeah, we're in an environment now, but somebody said it best. They said, when an A plus student only gets an A, then we're ready to rip the cover off the ball. And that seems to be what's happening now. But while everybody's talking about valuations, I don't hear a lot of talk about why these valuations are in jeopardy. I just hear they're fluffy, they're frosty, we're at levels that maybe, and but they're not. Not nobody, but not enough people are saying, we could have an energy shortage here that could hurt these valuations. I haven't seen a lot of people making that link in the talking heads circuits, and
and
I guess that's what I'm waiting for.
except they will link the .com bubble to the AI bubble now. That's what they say. I don't know. I tend to look at this. Of course, you have to have energy because with any forecast or vision, if you don't have energy, then it's just not going to happen. But I do look at this technology that's being spread rapidly throughout the world. I look at it running at a parallel to these trade deals. Look at what President Xi said today about the United States, that, hey, negotiations and talks are going fantastic. Well, I don't know if he used fantastic, but he used the word well. And I look at this world that we're moving into as a shared technology because AI transcends, countries. It transcends barriers if it's allowed to grow. So China has got an abundance of energy. The United States has an abundance of AI. China probably is going to get out of the starting gates fastest here. And I think the US is realizing that. Look at Jensen Huang's comments, about we have to, be co-partners here with China. And they do have an abundance of energy. I was just looking at a graph which highlighted precisely what you were talking about, Tim, and the United States is way down. But China is like miles ahead of the rest of the world
With coal,
with coal, but with other sources of energy. I do believe coal is a major part of that. Don't tell the green energy people about that part about that. But so there's going to have to be a meeting of the minds here, and I hope that all this work overseas at getting trade deals and peace deals, we now begin to focus full attention back here into the United States. And topic one is energy. Topic two is the underemployment situation that is driving this K recovery in the United States. If you work 1 hour, you're considered employed. If you want to work full time but only work 29 hours because corporations keep you under the rules of paying benefits, you're still considered employed. If you're working a full time job but only making $25,000 or less below the poverty level, you're still considered unemployed. And I can't stand when the Fed constantly talks about, well, employment situation is holding us back. It's a strong economy. No, it's not. It's not a strong economy. And I really hope that the administration's attention is firmly focused now on the domestic economy, energy, number one, underemployment, number two.
Well, I'm gonna refute that for a minute because I've had that feeling all along that
Mm-hmm.
that we're heading into a recession, that there's problems ahead. I have a friend who's in a molding business. He's got a molding business. He says the last 2, 3 months he's been blown out. Now I don't know if it's people, if it's companies that are ordering from him, preparing for Cyber Monday, for Black Friday, preparing for the holidays. Could be. But I don't know if you've done any Christmas shopping or gone to any of the malls recently, but we drove around for 20 minutes looking for a parking space. Places are packed. There's rope lines outside of some of these stores. Now, granted, some of these places are 30, 40% off. Black Friday sales start on Monday. They started last week. So there are big discounts out there, but the stores are crowded. It's surprising to me, and it's my own little microcosm of the world, but that's what I see.
Do people
Well,
have shopping bags, though?
well,
Yeah.
GDP argues we're talking about a 4% GDP plus or minus the shutdown, the government shutdown. But you got GDP growing nearly double from where it was, say, just 2 years ago. We were looking at 1.7, 1.8%. More recently, 2.3, 2.5. We start talking about a 4% GDP. This economy's roaring. I think the jobs picture is confusing because we're seeing layoffs in the public sector, but potential growth in the private sector. And again, we're running into that timing issue. The private sector is slower because they get the plants and they get the equipment and then they hire the people, and the people are hired in a pyramid. You get your senior people first and they bring in low, and all of that takes time. Whereas, you lay people off, give them 2 weeks or 4 weeks notice, and that's that. So you feel the layoff immediately, and you don't in the public sector, and you don't see the regrowth in the private sector very quickly. So I think that could confuse you. But with respect to the economy, economic activity is high, primarily because of all this investment that's come in. Dollars have come in a big way.
Back to Michael Burry. It's the overwhelming supply of liquidity that just keeps driving these things that you cannot measure anymore. You would think government shutdown would have slowed the economy down. I'd wait to see what these numbers show. But Fred, if your on hands, approach to things is seeing that it may not have any effect.
Yeah. It's shocking to me when we drive around.
Too much money chasing too few stocks.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
Well, you mentioned liquidity, and Steve, I know your expertise when we worked together, and then
Mhm.
further on was Japan. And there's a lot of talk about what's going on with the Bank of Japan now. You want to talk about that a little bit?
Well, they're putting themselves in a situation, and the analysis that you hear out in the marketplace is like, oh, they're going to expand their budget deficit even further. They're already 224% of debt to GDP. So I mean, there's nobody even in their ballpark. So why not do a little bit more? again, though, but the Japanese mindset is, hey, we remember back in the 90s when they owned everything, right? Rockefeller Center, Pebble Beach, and it all went bust. So they are looking at their economy as not strong enough on its own to be able to pull the needle out of the arm yet. And what they're proposing is more government spending, more stimulus. I don't know if it's going to work in Japan because it's a very closed economy. Um, but
But are we seeing the Bank of Japan starting to tighten or grumblings about that?
well, the market is tightening on them that's definite, right?
Right.
I mean, you had the 10-year yield. I forget how high it went, but it was, I don't know if it was a historic high on the 30-year bond in Japan. I don't know if that hit a historic high recently. Tim's probably better adept at that market, but I do know that, that Japan is really going to be in a struggle at some point.
This threatens the carry trade,
Yes.
which is a big piece of the U.S. leverage driving the
Right.
U.S. market.
That's where I was going with this. Like, is that the one? Is Japan the one that's going to pull the rug out from under everybody?
And that becomes, I talked this morning on a show that I do, and I was, saying, listen, if I had a carry trade, as dollar yen's approaching 158 and above, you better be hedging that yen because if the Bank of Japan comes in and they are starting with their comments, the last time they intervened wasn't that long ago, a couple of years ago maybe, but when they come in with a lot of money. And you may go to sleep at 158 and a half and wake up at 153. And then Tim's point, you're going to be caught in a trap. So, a lot of people were asking me, did the carry trade cause the US stock market to come down? And I was like, well, wait a second. Yen weakened from 151 to 157. No, that's not a, but the debt market interest rates in Japan were definitely beginning to percolate and cause a lot of problems. So this is a situation Japan's going to have to toe the line here because, Fred, I think, the point is they could cause the rug to come out very quickly. They say it's about $1.8 trillion in the carry trade in the markets today. That seems to be the number that I've come up with. So if that were to hit the exit, that's, going to be a substantial move in the market.
That's the essence of the leverage. I
Hmm.
think that the hedge funds are basically using the carry trade. Um, it's not so much somebody, and I'm probably, there's a piece of this too, people putting up plants and factories and borrowing through yen as opposed to borrowing straight US dollars.
I would think that Swiss would be a better borrow trade right now at 0%, and the currency stays strong.
Yeah, well, then again, it is Swiss, but
That's a whole nother subject.
yeah, really, a lot of cuckoo clocks and
Oh,
chocolate driving that.
I think they're the largest asset holder,
Well,
equity holder in the United States.
here's a
True,
thought
true.
experiment. Where's the leverage? Clearly, Bitcoin is a leverage meter if
Yes.
we had to have it. I had a position in Robinhood. I was fooling around with Robinhood puts, and I did real well as they beat up Robinhood. Freddie and I had a conversation about this, and he said, they still enjoy, even if the market goes down, they still enjoy volume.
Hmm.
And I said, well, that's true, but they got the leverage players,
That's
and the
right.
leverage players get blown out, and their customer base goes from X to half X.
Yeah.
So I really didn't think it was a valid argument. Uh, I think I look at Bitcoin, and it's not behaving well at all at this point.
Down like
It's in my
40%,
80s.
something like that.
Sorry?
It's
Is it down
essentially,
40 or 50% so
yeah,
far?
125 down to what, one to 88,000 roughly. I don't like. I was long Bitcoin. After the last top as it broke back below 110. I didn't like the chart formation on it. A lot of tops, and I squared up. The one I do like is Ethereum, especially as stable coins begin to move into more of the forefront. And I'm not going to be a conspiracy guy, but the United States and stable coins is a great buyer and holder of U.S. Treasuries. So I can easily see, an Ethereum perhaps being a better buy now at these levels because I think, Tim, the leverage that you referred to, I think it's all out. I think most of it is out of the market right now.
Oh, really? Okay. So
Well,
then a change in the carry trade will change that leverage component. So that's a vulnerability, right?
that would be a vulnerability, but my point would be that if people up an ante again, they can get back into leverage. I think all the leverage trades that were active in the market have been annihilated. I don't think anybody would still be holding, a Bitcoin 115, 110, 120 level. That's all been
I don't
blown
know
out.
about that. I disagree. I mean, those guys, they have blinders on.
Really.
People that are in Bitcoin, like I'll never sell. I'm in it for the rest of my life. It's
Yeah,
zero.
but those are not leverage positions. And what you're saying is bullish, Steve.
Yes.
Uh, and if we had to really indicate the bullish factors versus the bearish factors, I think we picked two big bearish factors here. One is the threat to the energy system,
Yes.
and the other is the threat to the carry trade.
Yeah. The threat to the carry trade would be if the Bank of Japan intervenes. And let's face it,
Or
we've all.
if they tighten. I know you said the
Oh,
market's tightening for them, but if they start to come out and say we have to change posture.
so
What's
they
the
have
inflation picture there?
Hmm?
their inflation just got back to 3%. And of course, that's a good thing for the Japanese. They want the 3%. They want to make sure that deflation is gone. They went down to about 2.8, 2.7, and now the most recent number that came out has them back above the 3% threshold. So, Fred, that would be a curveball on the market because everybody's saying the new prime minister and the MOF BOJ are all aligned and that they're going to let this go one more meeting before they raise rates. If the Bank of Japan turned and said market forces are, behind this move, they could easily use that as a leverage. That would take a lot of the dollar yen fluff out of a 157, 158 level, and could cause a very fast unwind of carry.
A
Um,
bullish piece would be Venezuela. If we go in and hit Venezuela, I think the energy markets would respond by taking oil lower.
wow, could you imagine oil dropping further?
You think they would take oil lower?
I do, yeah. You
I
don't think
would.
so?
I don't think so. I think that Venezuela is an oil producer. If you get it under control, yeah.
Well, you
Different
get
story.
Maduro out and you install Machado, is that her name? Um, uh, she's going to drill, baby, drill. I mean, she wears a Trump MAGA hat.
Right. Well, I think if you get to that point, but it's easier said than done. You know.
I bet you the okay. Here's one. What are the odds that Maduro decides to pack it in and go to, I don't know, someplace like the Soviet Union or someplace in the Middle East or some friendly country with a couple of $100 billion to feather his nest rather than watch the Gerald Ford send 75 jets over and start taking out his labs and the source of his income.
Or what about if he just simply turns and says, okay, no mas. Uh, I hear you, Mr. Trump. What do you want us to do?
I don't
And
think
he
that's
holds
right.
on and he holds on to power.
What are the odds of that happening? Of Maduro being neutralized either way?
Yeah, I'd say very high that he gets neutralized. I would think that it would be in the U.S. interest not to go in with a military because that's going to give a lot of people a lot of ammunition to come at. What is this? Your dictator. Here we go again with all the words getting thrown around. I think it'll simply be a sit down. very much like, I think you guys may have seen that, where one of the former intelligence officers, senior, said that Trump had sat down with the Taliban and showed him a picture of his house and said, I think very much is the same type of thing. In fact, I do believe Trump said, "We know where you live, we know your address, we know which room you sleep in." He said that just the other day. Those words and what he's been doing carry a lot of weight. I think it would be in his interest, Maduro's interest, to simply, hey, look, okay, I can't get away with this anymore. Time to change my game.
He operates with a carrot and a stick, and he's got a big stick sitting out in the ocean. The Gerald Ford alone, much less I mean, he's got an armada there.
Maduro's got the cartels on the other side saying, "Don't play this game. We know where you live too." So I think it's more likely that he flies off to Qatar or something like that rather than
Well,
sitting
either
home.
scenario gets you the same place. Either
Yeah,
you got a friendly guy sitting in his chair, but the point is, either way, he's not sitting in his chair. And
Yeah,
and that was really the base of my question. What are the odds that he's not sitting in that chair in 3 months?
I wouldn't want to be in a cartel right now because there's no question that the crosshairs are on them. It's an illicit trade. It's a drain. It kills people. Blah blah blah. Make all your cases, but there's definitely a change. It's not like what was the old '80s. We went against the drugs, and but it was all
say no to
stop it.
drugs. Yeah,
Yeah,
say no to drugs. It was
say
Manson.
just say no. Right, right. Now it's a little bit sterner than just say no.
If you really step back, in our lifetimes, we've never seen a major initiative in South America. Yeah, there have been incidents, one country or another, but here you got
Falkland.
Argentina's made a complete turnaround.
Yep,
Colombia's on the fence
yep.
and moving our way. And Venezuela is facing being deposed.
Right. Doesn't Ecuador have some elections coming up or just had them as well?
Brazil does. Brazil's
Yeah,
I
got
don't know.
elections coming
I
yeah,
up.
get
and
distracted because there's a lot of really beautiful women in Ecuador.
yeah, yeah. um, I think that you're right. Outside of the Latin American bailout, what really has happened in our life, and again,
Falklands, the UK and the Falklands. That was the big one,
that was the
right?
big one, or
That was
Grenada.
Argentina, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Carrier lost.
yeah. So it's going to be interesting, but with all these things happening, geez, Tim, that would be amazing if the United States did begin to focus on diplomacy and moving Latin America because that's a great supply of natural resources. Um, but this combination of business, government, um, the circular investing that seems to be going on, I've heard you guys talk about that a number of times. This is kind of like at the center of, I don't like to call it a new world order. I have a lot of names that I tried to come up with. The one that I've termed is a quantum convergence. And I think that out of chaos, comes order. And I think that that's the precipice that we are at. We still need to get Russia and Ukraine. But when you look at that meeting just last week with the Saudi king or to be king, that was amazing. you know, right
Yeah,
there on the spot, 700 billion, but I'll up it to a trillion and maybe more. This is unheard of, like, in our time. So I think that this, kind of converging of global economies around a centerpiece of technology is just amazing. I don't think there's enough of us out there looking over the horizon at that, like what it means.
no doubt. I mean, I feel like it's 1850 and I'm looking at a railroad coming over
Exactly.
the horizon.
Yep.
There's massive merging technologies. But I think we got a couple of choke points, and electricity is one of them right now.
Yeah, that's a
And
big
that's
one.
my immediate focus. Yeah, when you want to look over this hump, what's happened here has been massive.
You know,
But
Tim, I got to just say one thing on that. I totally agree with you. That's near right in front of us right now. My son is a carpenter, and he's a very skilled carpenter, but he's always had a great engineering type mind. And he calls me up and he says, I've been using this AI model in Grok, and I've been saying that, I need to solve this energy process. And my son blew me out of the water with the amount of knowledge and information that he exchanged back and forth and literally came up with a brand new rare earth material that could be put into a battery. And he thought he had a developed battery. Of course, when he asked the AI to test it, it said that the component that he was beginning to use would explode at a certain heat temperature. So back to the drawing board. But my point is that if a guy who is a carpenter and on a whim is beginning to do this, how many Einsteins are we soon to discover that may exactly address the type of demand that you're talking about? Because everybody needs energy, and some kid out there is going to come up with a solution that maybe helps that situation in the near term.
yeah, and if the market decides to focus on it, maybe they'll only look at it for a half hour, you know, um, and then they'll look over the horizon too. But my question is really, where is the focus? When I sat in a trading room, I would call a guy like you or Freddie or somebody, and the first thing I would say is, "What do you think?" Because I wanted to know what their focus was. What are you looking at? Because you could look left when everybody's looking right,
Mm-hmm.
and you could, you're looking at the more valid issue. But if nobody else is looking, well,
What we
you're not
said
going to
the
get a
other
move.
day, the old Gottman line, you said it was Keynes. The market can be wrong a lot longer than you can be solvent.
That's right. A
Yeah,
butterfly flapping its wings, right?
yeah.
I just want to change the focus
Go
for
ahead.
one last point that I want to bring up. There was a meeting in the White House last week that took me completely by surprise. Some people applauded it. Some people were saying, what did I just see?" The mayor-elect of New York City went to the White House, met with Donald John Trump, President of the United States, who he's called a despot, who he's called a number of different things,
Called them a fascist today.
called him a fascist again. So Trump is right there smiling with him, along, yeah, do what you got to do. Who is this guy? Like, is it all a show? Is it all a game? Are we all being played on both sides? I looked at that meeting and that spun my head so many different ways. I don't know who to believe. It's to me, it's all a game, and I don't know what's out there.
I couldn't agree. I mean, I also was, wow, look at these two guys shaking hands, buddy, buddy, hey, hey. I think that, the way I read that in the tea leaves, watch out for the January State of the Union and the in total focus back into the US. Already you're hearing talk about, like, for example, healthcare. And suddenly, the Republic,
I gotta argue with you there
go
because
ahead.
Trump is fighting the guys that want to focus on the U.S. He's calling out Massey. He's threw Marjorie Taylor Greene to the curb and Rand Paul. These are guys that are all U.S. focused that he's got no use for anymore. So
If you don't begin to focus a little bit on the type of things that Mandami and the New York mayor is calling out, if you just ignore them, you're not going to win the urban centers in the midterm election.
yeah,
However,
the
if
kids are gone. You know, he won a much bigger majority than he thought he was of that 18 to 24-year-old or 18 to 35-year-old because they wanted change. They wanted Doge. They believed in Musk. They believed in all of that, and it's not coming about. We talked about things going on with Doge, and to me, he can't get Congress to stop spending. So he's saying, just like he did with the Epstein files, I can't get Congress to stop spending. It's not important. We got to be transparent about Epstein. We got to show everything we can. Then it's like, it's not important because he can't get it done. If he
Well,
can't get it done, it's not important. And I think the people are going to fight him on that. I think
Musk
he's
said
going to
it.
have a hard time.
Musk said it well when he left Doge. He said, "You can't get them to cut any money there." However, however, if you grow the economy, back to Tim's point on 4% plus, I mean, debt to
Debt to
GDP
GDP.
ratio
Yeah.
dropped this year.
That's the whole ball. It's the whole ball of wax right there.
Yeah, right
You
there.
know, I had a friend, Freddie. His name was Junior. He was a big guy, and he had some, let's call it, questionable friends. And he said to me, "You know, Tim, when you don't like somebody, it's obvious. You could see it in your face." He said, "But let me tell you, there's no," and I'll never forget his words. He said, "There's no greater joy in life than being at a party with your worst enemy, joking with him and laughing at his jokes while you got your hand on his wife's ass." And I never forgot that. And I think Mondami came to the White House and Trump had his hand on his wife's ass. I really think that's what that was all about. I think he's smiling and joking and saying, "Yeah, yeah, yeah. Wait until you're out of money and you're going to come to me and you're looking for federal money." Because he threw friends under the bus. He's got no qualms whatsoever with
Yeah.
throwing the mayor in New York under the bus when he has to.
Look, he's
So I
ready.
think this was all facade. It was all a
He's
smile. Yeah, yeah. Call me a
Okay.
fascist. That's funny. You don't answer. It's easier not to answer. See that? He said to him, "Don't answer. It's easier not to answer that question.
yeah.
Don't worry about it.
I mean,
It's
he's
not
ready to
important."
throw the Ukraine under the bus on Thursday, right? Isn't that the
Yeah,
deadline day?
yeah,
Goodbye. We're done. See ya. Good
yeah.
luck.
Color me gone.
Yeah. So this is an interesting time that, that we're living, we're trading in, and I think actually too many people, and I go back to this Michael Burry guy because I read the whole statement that he put out in his letter, and I just look and I'm like, yes, you're absolutely right. There is too much liquidity in the world. The algorithms are making no sense of these moves at times. I mean, look at that sell-off. What exactly sparked the move up and then the move back down? Okay. I mean, there was nothing out that would have indicated, a turnaround. Nobody made a comment. There was no tweets, no nothing, no economic releases. That's just pure algorithmic trading. And the machines are, dominating the space. So, yeah, you can't look at when you say, when you walk to a dealing room today and say, "Hey, what do you guys think today?" I mean, put you, what do they think today? What
I think
actually
buy on
out
the
there?
dip. Buy on the
Buy the
dip.
dip. Buy the
That's
dip.
and I think what drives it is available leverage.
Yeah.
And if we had a meter that a light started to flash when leverage started to get drained, when people were saying, "Look, I'm not so sure I'm going to," when margin clerks are starting to look and get antsy, at that moment, that's I really wish we knew where that was.
Yeah.
But I just can't get a handle on how much leverage is in the market at a given time. But I really firmly believe that that's what's driving these moves.
Sure, I do agree with you. And, hey, earnings season's just about over now, right? And what does that mean? That means all the corporate buybacks start kicking in. I mean, how are you going to go down if all the leverage is out of the market now
Well, you
and
got holiday markets too,
the holiday markets?
right?
Yeah,
And you got the January tax effect.
yeah.
I'm looking for losses to take. I
Well,
don't have a
plenty of
lot
them,
of them, but I
plenty
got to
of them
find
out
them
there.
against these gains. And, there's a lot of cross currents here.
Yeah, yeah. And then you have to watch the wash rule. So if you're going to take your loss, you got to take it now, so you can
31
get
days, right?
yeah get back in January. But you may miss this this great bounce back now because if we say it was an algorithmic over push to the downside, well, once it starts turning, they got to get back in because they trade continuous. It's perpetual motion with the machinery.
Yeah. I'm afraid that we have more questions than answers here. But I'm coming away from this conversation as bearish as I was.
Yeah,
Um,
I think about what a guy I respect who says all the time, you got to buy insurance when you can, not when you have to. So
Oh boy,
I think
yeah.
I think we're at the point now where you really have to have
well,
insurance on.
you wanna look for an opportunity. VIX dropped 4 points today, so options volatility is a lot cheaper than it was just a day ago. So it is a good time to load up on some insurance.
That sounds like a quote from Bruce.
Well, listen, let's leave it there, guys. We're
Okay,
running 45 minutes. I think it's been a great spirited discussion. Steve, thanks very much for
sure.
having you on.
Good to talk
Happy
to you,
holidays
Steve.
to
Best of
you
the
and Tim.
holidays.
Best to you, Tim, and anytime you guys in a pinch, just give me a call. I'm down in
Absolutely.
Florida enjoying retirement.
God bless you. All right, guys.
Bye,
Thanks
guys.
again.